Today we have with us Captain Ashok Shirur. Sir is an ex-air defense officer and has been in the information security domain for three or decades. He consults and works with a lot of Fortune 500 companies and also a lot of government public sector undertakings. He is almost a pioneer in the cybersecurity, information security industry in India, I would say. And today we have had some discussions with him with respect to the cybersecurity landscape. And today, what we are going to cover is as to some particular specifics, or we'll take a deep dive into the cybersecurity, information security from more transactional point of view in today's discussion. So, thank you again for your time and joining us today, sir.
Good evening and thank you.
Sir, I would like to understand as a information security professional, you have had a very long stint in the industry. Are there some 2, 3 major initiatives? I know, I mean, given your the span and depth of your experience, this would be too limiting a question, but still, 2, 3 major initiatives or strategies that you have implemented for your clients in the last 3 decades of your cybersecurity profession.
Okay, possibly the most standout initiative that we may have used for our customers would be the risk management framework. So this is basically implementing a comprehensive risk management framework which identifies, assesses, and mitigates possible security risks. So this involves conducting a regular series of risk assessments to understand an organization's threat landscape, possible vulnerabilities, and potential impacts on business operations. Now, based on establishing risk tolerance levels and developing risk mitigation strategies, we are able to then address the identified vulnerabilities. Continuously monitoring and reassessing risks, we are able to ensure that the security controls continue to remain effective, even though the threats keep evolving. So this would be possibly the most, I would say, fulfilling or satisfying area. Then the security awareness training and training programs. So these, because it gives you a lot of interaction with the clients and the lower end in the client, you get to learn a lot during those interactions on how best to develop and implement security awareness training programs. Because today, human error becomes a significant factor in many security incidents, whether it is ransomware, whether it is DDoS attacks, whether it is phishing. Ultimately the lowest common denominator seems to be the user. So educating staff on the importance of security practices becomes critical. There is no shortcut to that. So these programs would cover aspects of phishing awareness, password hygiene, social engineering tactics, and proper handling of sensitive information. And with this and constantly updating the curriculum, it is possible to get the users to reflect on current threats and incorporate, exercises where we are able to then sort of gamify the training, the evaluation, and the constant review of the security posture of an organization and the end user in the organization. And the third would be incident response planning. This again is a very, very important and very fulfilling area because it involves a lot of engagement with the customer, understanding the business processes, understanding the digital assets that the organization has, and ensuring that if there is a possibility of an incident, who needs to do what in order to ensure that the business is up, back, and running without any major outage. So if one is able to establish a robust incident management or an incident response plan, this is absolutely essential for effectively managing and mitigating a security incident. This would involve, things like how do you detect, how do you respond, and how do you recover from a security breach. And, either one needs to do tabletop exercises or then do simulations to test the actual incident response plan and ensure that the organization is well prepared and everyone needs to know what they need to know in order for things to fall into place when there is a chaotic situation that emerges. So these would be the 3 areas.
Sir, again, question limiting because you have very huge experience. But how would you typically develop and enforce security policies and procedures for cybersecurity and information security policies and procedures for your clients typically? What all
So,
would that involve? I mean, broadly, what parameters would you involve?
in our experience, it is very, very rare that we get the luxury of doing what you're suggesting. In most cases, it is unfortunately a firefighting exercise. But if we were to go in an ideal situation, if we were to go where we believe this is the right way to start, the first step would be a risk assessment. It's a comprehensive risk assessment to identify and understand the specific risks and threats that an organization may face. This includes evaluating the potential impact of security solutions also, and the potential impact of incidents on the business operations and on the data integrity. This would be the first step. Second would be the legal and regulatory compliance requirements of the organization. So the security policies have to align with the relevant legal and regulatory requirements specific to the industry and the geography of the organization. So this may include data protection laws, industry standards, and other compliance frameworks. So, for example, if the organization needs to do a lot of card-related transactions, then PCI DSS becomes relevant. If the organization needs to get into healthcare-related information about customers, then HIPAA compliance is required. If the organization is into Indian banking and financial sector, then Bharat SOX becomes relevant. So the alignment of the security policies to the regulatory and legal compliance requirement is critical. Then defining the security policies itself, it is critical to develop clear and concise security policies that squarely address the risk and comply with the legal and regulatory requirements. Security policies should cover areas such as data protection, access controls, incident response, and acceptable use, because users need to be very clear about what is it that they need to comply with, what it is that they're expected to do, and what is expected of them. And that's the reason why in an earlier suggestion I had made was that stakeholders have to be involved. There is no way in which this kind of an approach or this kind of an implementation or a rollout is possible without collaboration of stakeholders. This could be the executive, it could be department heads, it could be IT, it could be end users. Input gathering from every level ensures that the security policies are actually practical, aligned to the business objective. There is no point in implementing a security policy which is debilitating as far as business continuity is concerned. If the policy or the tool that you implement causes more headache to the user than the possible vulnerability that it addresses, there's no point. So this helps in fostering the culture of security across the organization if it is transparent. Then education and training. So that's an area which needs to also form part of the entire gamut of things that one puts together on an ongoing basis for different parts of the organization based on their respective needs. The education and training, the constant education and training is needed. And lastly, the access controls. So once the security policy is defined, the access controls get implemented across the organization with, like the point that I made earlier, zero trust. So with the principle has to be of least privilege. So user roles and permissions need to get defined in a manner that they have access only to the resources that are necessary for their job functions, nothing else. And like I also mentioned earlier, regularly reviewing these policies is critical so that you are abreast with any changes that may be required because change scenarios or change in technology or change in the legal or regulatory compliance requirements.
Right. So, sir, you have mentioned about incident response without naming anyone. Would you be able to share one experience which still remains with you of a major incident which happened?
Yes. So I can give you one example of so media is a very large segment for us. Most of the large media houses in the country, whether they are in the television, whether they are in the newsprint, whether they are in any other area of media is a very large customer for us. There was an instance where one of the largest media houses in the country, during negotiations for a particular contract renewal, they decided to go with another partner for the endpoint security for their network. The difference was some 72 odd rupees, which was like a very small difference, but there was some reason why it happened, and they decided to go ahead with another vendor. So we graciously exited, though we had other aspects of security that we were handling. But then we got a call 2 months after this particular instance, and we got a frantic call. He said, you have to come over and you have to get your team. We are in trouble. So I said, you have given the contract to some other vendor, so you need to rely on that vendor. You need to get that vendor to do what he's supposed to do. So they said, no, you are aware that he would not be able to address the situation. We need you. Please come. So we went with the entire team, and this was a time when there was a malware that had prevalent called Blaster. The name of the malware was Blaster, and it was causing all the machines across the organization to just continuously reboot. So they need to come out with their output. So I wouldn't name the output. They need to come out with the output, and they were just not able to work on the system. So that's exactly what we address: availability of the systems from an information security perspective. So we sat through the night, disconnected each machine, cleaned up each machine, reconnected every machine, and then gave them the network in time for them to just barely breach their deadline on the delivery of the output. So then there was the review done about what happened, after everything came under control. And then there was an evaluation done of the amount that they saved by the difference in the two codes and the cost that they lost. Because what happens is, because of the output not happening in time, the losses go into multiple directions. You have advertisers loss, you have KF demurrages, you have a whole lot of implications. You have customers who crib about delay in the delivery, etc., etc. So quantum of the loss was even that one day that there was that delay was much, much larger. So these kinds of things happen.
Yeah, so basically it became a breaking news internally for the media house, and kind of they realized that they'll not be able to publish or produce or release or whatever media form they were in.
Correct.
And suddenly there can be. So how typically, what do you do, sir, that once there has been an incident, what steps do you recommend to be taken for swift and effective response to the incident? Because whatever you do, there are going to be incidents. We can reduce it; it's never going to be zero.
Correct. So that's the reason why the maximum focus or the maximum impetus is on preparedness. If we have established an incident response plan that outlines the procedures, the roles, and the responsibilities of the incident response team, that is critical. So this involves identifying what are the critical assets, establishing communication channels, and ensuring that the necessary tools and resources are in place. This takes doing, this takes documentation, this takes sitting together with the team. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So this is a fairly interactive exercise. Then identification, detecting and recognizing signs of a security incident. To a large extent, very rarely do organizations even realize that, they are facing an attack or they are under attack until it is fairly late. So usage of security tools, monitoring the logs, analyzing network traffic, identifying abnormal behavior, suspicious behavior, and using, again, artificial intelligence, because today the volume of logs that get outputted by the various security and network devices in the network are phenomenal. So humanly, it becomes very difficult to identify any kind of a trend or any kind of a outage in that. So it's important to use AI to help assist the human who can take a decision based on the output that the AI gives. Then containment. You would have heard about the recent challenge that AIMS faced, where patient records and the systems were all down. So containment becomes very critical. How to take immediate actions to prevent the incident from spreading, cause further damage. It may have been identified in a few systems. A few systems may have reported a problem. How to contain it and how to disallow it from spreading across the network, spreading across geographies, spreading across from desktops to servers to other critical assets. So this could involve things like isolation, things like network disconnection, things like stricter access control lists, blocking the malicious activity, and maybe even disabling the compromised accounts. Then the eradication, identifying what is the root cause, removing the root cause of the incident. This not only addresses the malware or the malicious software, it also works towards addressing the vulnerability itself. Because normally what we are seeing is malicious software typically make the most of existing exploits or vulnerabilities, zero-day existing exploits or vulnerabilities. So other than removing the malware, it is also critical to eliminate the vulnerability or the weakness itself by patching or by security fixes, etc. Then the recovery process, restoring systems back to the original, restoring the data back to get to normal operations, maybe restoring from backups, maybe applying patches, maybe ensuring that all systems are secure before bringing them up back online. Because when, like this example that I gave you of the blaster virus, if we had not disconnected every machine, cleaned it up, and then connected it back, even one machine on the network which was compromised could again bring down the entire network. So it is critical for the recovery phase to be done in a very, very diligent and careful manner. And then, as in the army, we have this favorite of lessons learned. So it is important to document the lessons that are learned from the entire exercise once it has gotten resolved, so that there is a thorough review done, and any responses or processes that could further strengthen or address any existing weakness in the existing plan. This would help in improvement of the response that would happen for any future incident. Because there is I was speaking to someone earlier in the day, and there's a very interesting paradigm that I was suggesting to him, that in information security there is no if you will get hit, it is when will you get hit. So don't ever think that will you ever get hit or not. That is not the question. It is only when. So when you get hit, how best you are prepared, how best have you planned to overcome that situation is what will actually be the pivot of whether you will succeed or you will not succeed.
Thank you so much for this, sir. I believe that the audience would be able to draw how to go about developing a career in the cybersecurity, and if they have to be on the services provider side, then what they can do in terms of the matrices and all they need to follow for being able to implement the cybersecurity protocols. Thank you so much for your time, sir.